Thank you. Thank you. So the reason why we chose to start, we always start with a biographical exercise. We call it like that. Is because all our activities, all DCI Italy's activities, are stemming from a human rights-based approach, and the consideration of human rights has to go hand in hand with the consideration of the centrality of the person and his or her personal story. So we cannot really advocate also, but also protect or consider human rights, and in our specific case children's rights, outside from the consideration of the centrality of the person and of his personal story, his personal biography. So we ask you to remember a moment of your childhood, to get into the let's say right environment, we hope, because we will deal a lot with children. So I mean, the idea is to start from ourselves, because also as professionals, when we interact and work with children, of course we put a lot of ourselves.
And it's good to reconnect a little bit with this dimension of ourselves that is there, but many times is hidden or far away. So we always like to help to reconnect a bit.
So we get into the topic, let's say. So why we chose to focus on unaccompanied or separated children, and who we are, because we still didn't really say a lot. So we are from Defense for Children International Italy. We're a grassroots organization, an NGO. We are part of the Defense for Children International movement, and we were born, let's say, within the preparation of the CRC, of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So our approach and our work is mainly based on the consideration and implementation and advocacy in terms of children's rights, and so defense for children. That's the reason. So we are the Italian section, and we are part of the Become Safe initiative, which is a European project that is coordinated by Defense for Children International Belgium, with partners from DCI Spain, DCI Greece, and Terdesoma, who is hosting this webinar. Why the Become Safe initiative? The main goal is to promote and act for the protection of migrant children by reinforcing the capacities of professionals, in particular working with them. In Italy, we adapted, as for every action, we decided to adapt a bit this overall concept to our specific experience. DCI Italy is working since many years in the field of protection of children's rights. And in particular, we have a long-term experience in the field of working with and for unaccompanied and separated children, also for geographical reasons. So let's say, I mean, we are a first arrival country. So of course, migration is a hot topic, as unfortunately also the media are remembering us. And I mean, in this long-term experience, we came up with different models and actions for the prevention and protection of unaccompanied and separated children. In particular, in times we advocate a lot for the institution of a voluntary guardianship for unaccompanied children in Italy. And in the end, and we will go to that in a while, finally in 2017, a national law on the protection of unaccompanied children released, and the voluntary guardianship is finally part of this law. But we also have long-term experience in the field of analysis, research, training, and advocacy concerning trafficking and exploitation of children, in particular migrant ones. And we have a lot of experience, I would say, also in the training and support of guardians and professionals. All this experience recently came up, let's say, in the joining of what was the Child Rights Help Desk initiative, an European initiative in several European countries. Within this Child Rights Help Desk experience, DCI Italy established a system of analysis and monitoring on the implementation of the Law 47/2017 on the protection of unaccompanied children, which is actually a best practice in Europe. It is considered so, but as we will see, as a very scattered implementation all over the country. So it's still a very young law and still a bit weak, I would say. Within the Become Safe initiative, we try to connect the analysis and the expertise and experience we already have at national level with the concept of the Become Safe initiative. So we try to come up with a policy paper where we connect these elements of analysis together with the implications in terms of protection. The proposal for today is to start from the analysis. I will go through the main indicators that our colleagues, actually it's not me and Caterina, but our colleagues conceived for the analysis of the Law 47. And then stemming from that, we will try to show a bit some of the main implications for the protection of unaccompanied children, and then go into the initiative, the Become Safe project, and the approach that we try to implement and propose.
I will also say that after we show you the approach we had in Italy to the Become Safe project, we will enter a bit more into this idea of prevention as an effective strategy to prevent the violation of rights of children, and in that way avoid violence, avoid the insurgence of violence in the lives of unaccompanied children. Then we will present to you some standards, a checklist for professionals that hopefully can help professionals positioning themselves in a system that many times does not consider the best interests of the child as a primary consideration. And we invite you to participate to the questions. We will have a bit of time in the end, but please feel free to comment, to ask in the chat, to have the word, and we will do our best to include you.
Thank you, Katia. So moving into the legislation. So of course, I mean, there are people from different places in Europe attending. So I do hope that this way of presenting the law can also give you an insight of the peculiarities of the Italian system. What you're seeing is our mandala, we call it like this. So it's the system, is a system actually, because we always consider a systemic approach. So this is the system of indicators, a set of 9 indicators that we chose to analyze the Law 47/2017 on the protection of unaccompanied and foreign minors. As you can see, it's a system of analysis, but also a system of action. And in the Become Safe initiative, we'll come up with a set of call to actions stemming from these indicators. So you see that there is a very circular approach, and we always try to keep to consider which are the legislative standards and to put them really into practice, to call for institutions to put them into practice. So the analysis of the Law 47 that has been developed in the framework of the Child Rights Help Desk and in the framework, together with this initiative, we are part of the National Observatory on the Implementation of the Law with the CESP institution. So I mean, this is the set of analysis. So there are 9 indicators that are always interrelated, and the child, as you can see, is at the center. These 9 indicators are reception, institutional taking charge, voluntary guardianship, listening practices, identification interview, age assessment, then a broader indicator concerning development, education and training, health, and transition to adult age. This system, I'm gonna present you briefly, hopefully, which are these 9 indicators. And within the presentation, I will try not only to give you an insight on which are the law prescriptions, but also to highlight which are the main critical aspects and implications for protection. Please write if anything is unclear, and I will try to respond you in the more precise way. Before starting from them, I will just want to give you an insight a bit on numbers, just to give you an idea of the phenomena of unaccompanied and separated children here in Italy. So at the moment, at the end of September 2022, according to national surveys, there are more than 18,000 unaccompanied children located in all over the country, with a majority, with a strong percentage of Ukrainian children, which are around 5,000. So I mean, this phenomenon is really impacting, and it has changed a bit the geography, let's say, of the phenomena. The main countries of origin of these children are, apart from Ukraine, Egypt, Tunisia, Albania, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Collocation of the children on the territory is very scattered, with a very high presence in Sicily as first place of arrival, and then different numbers all over the regions. Then this is just to give you an example. So we are, after a decrease during the pandemic, we are again close to the numbers of 2018, where there were a very high presence. But still, we are not talking about millions of children, and we are not talking about an emergency, because it's a phenomenon that is ongoing since many, many years. It's important, is the stress on emergency, because unfortunately, our system is still acting on an emergency response. So then I start with the first indicator. As I mentioned before, is reception. So in this indicator, we try to analyze the types of institutional care, the Institute of Foster Care, and alternative forms of care in the country. And the first important things to recall is that the Law 47 2017 puts its basis on the CRC, and so on the principle of non-discrimination. So according to law, there shouldn't be any discrimination among national or foreign children. But this is not the case, and the first indicator concerning reception clearly explains that, because also the reception system for children is different from the child protection system for national children. With the law, there has been an improvement, at least on paper. So there are settled time for first and second reception system for children. So in first reception, children should stay for a maximum of 30 days, and then be moved, let's say, to a second reception system where they can actually start their own project, life project, towards the transition to adult age. the law also foresees that children should be located in this SAI system, which is a system for hosting and integration. And this should be the preferred placement for unaccompanied children, and that this placement should be ensured also for 6 months after the children turn 18. This to support, of course, the process of integration, because you can imagine that arriving at 16, 17 years old is not an easy thing to learn the language, find a job, and find an accommodation, just to name three things. So, I mean, they have the right to these 6 months more, also to get their documents and conclude the project. Also, the law foresees foster care placements for unaccompanied children, and this should be preferred placement, but data clearly show that this is not the case. Still, foster care placement is very residual. I lost the word. Placement. Okay. So from our analysis, it is clear that there is a very scattered implementation of the reception system, where there are different kind of structures with different way of functioning, not only among the regions, but also in the same city. So this inequality, let's say, and diversity of placements not only represent in some cases an institutional violence, because of course not all rights are guaranteed, but also does not foresee and support a real integration process and a real integration for young people when they turn 18. In terms of protection, what we identify is that with a higher quality of the reception system, that means also trained professionals and in general an homogeneity of practices within the system itself, this can contribute to lower down vulnerability of children and to promote their protection. Concerning the indicator 2, so institutional care and taking charge. Here, what we consider is the overall taking charge of the child from the different services, from social services, from reception, from police for what concerns the document, from the juvenile court for what concerns the guardianship, and in general the whole path. From school, etc. So all the agencies from the micro to the macro level that should allow the child to really develop his personal project and hopefully become a citizen in the long run. In terms of so what we consider as a first step, that the law considers actually, is that there should be an individualized taking in charge of the child, so that there should be a specific project and specific file, and then I go to both of them, for every child. So every path should be different and specific for each person. So the law foresees, for example, this social file, this cartella sociale, like a file with all the information of the child that should function also as a way of putting all the agencies together to see the child from a complete perspective, but also the development and participation of the child to an individualized educational project, or life project, as you want to call it. In Italian is PEI, progetto educativo individualizzato, or piano educativo individualizzato. But what we see from our analysis that has been developed in 4 regions, but which are Liguria, Apulia, Sicily, and Marche, but that we can really extend to the whole country, is that still we are very far from what the law foresees. And again, the system, the reception system, but in general, the system for unaccompanied children is not taking into consideration the specificity of each child, but on the contrary, usually propose paths that are always the same, that are very similar, because of lack of quality, because of a lack of resources. So still we are very far from the consideration of the centrality of the person, as we were recalling at the beginning. And another point that is very critical, and this you will see in many indicators, has to deal with the cultural mediation. Cultural mediation has to be intended not only as a translation, but really as a bridge between cultures. But this is not the case, not only into shelters, but also in all aspects of children's rights, of children's lives. And of course, this really represents a problem in terms of information, in terms of participation, in terms of listening of the child. When the child are not taken into consideration, of course, they are more vulnerable. And this, for example, leads to a great number of children going missing. We are around 5,000 children going missing per year, which is a lot. Missing, it doesn't mean that they are into criminal nets, or maybe they just move on the territory, or they try to cross other borders. But still, if you can think about 5,000 going, I mean, if 5,000 children, Italian were going missing, this would be like a national crisis. But this is not the case for migrant children. So still the system is not able to really interact, but like keep, I would say, children safe and protected. In terms of protection, as I said, a better coordination among agencies from the micro to the macro level, and harmonization of practices on a territorial level would, of course, work as a strong support to recognize the children's rights and respond to their individual needs. So, voluntary guardianship. Okay, this is a very specific and then the real novelty, I would say, of the law 47/2017, which in many cases is just no, it's still important, but it's just giving an order to other legislation. But voluntary guardianship is the real novelty of the law, and is a very specific system that, from our knowledge, is the only one in Europe. I spent 2 words on who's the guardian, just to give you a clearer view of the thing. So in Italy, a voluntary guardian could be any citizen who have at least 25 years old, and they have no problems in terms of penal criminal records, let's say, and they should go through selection training from the regional ombudsman, and then after this training they give their availability, and they are merged, let's say, into a list which is the responsibility of the juvenile court. This is in a very few words how it works. What is important is that the function of the guardian, which is already present in our legislation from the Second World War, before the Second World War, for orphan children from 1942, if I'm not wrong. And in that case, the guardian already had the legal representation of the child and the duty of care and follow-up, let's say, of the child. Here, for unaccompanied children, a very important characteristic of this role is the independence, because it should not, according to our view, it should not be considered as a part of the system. Because being a citizen, of course, is different from being a professional. So is a citizen that has been appointed by the court, so it has a very important role, but still is not paid, is volunteer. This we saw that really gives a change in children's lives. But still, the law doesn't say a lot on guardians, but there are other documents, especially from our national ombudsman on guardianship, and we work a lot on guardianship. Still, from our analysis, there are several problems. Still, the number of guardians is very low compared to the number of children on the territory. And there are, so there is a strong need for sensitization of citizens in assuming this role. There is a problem in terms of training because there is not a unique way of training guardians, of really making them more competent, because it's a very important role, as you can imagine. And there is a problem in matching, because there is not a matching system in place. So in some territories there are interviews, in others there aren't. In others it is just to see a list of names and put together the list of names of the citizens with the list of names of the children. There is a problem in appointment of guardians, because they should be appointed in due time for asylum seekers within 2 days, if not in the shortest time possible. There is a problem, and this usually causes the appointment still of an institutional guardian, which of course is not independent because it's the institution itself. And then there is a very strong lack of support and follow-up mechanism. There is not a system of monitoring guardians in place, as well as there is not a system of supporting them, because of course there are various issues that they should follow, like documents, reception, school. So I mean, you can imagine a voluntary citizen, how many things has to know in order to be a good guardian. So, but from our analysis, not only ours actually, but the guardian is a key actor and has a key role in the protection of children, because with the presence of an adult person that is close to the child, this could really work as a protective factor. Then I go on indicator 4, so listening practices and active participation of minors in proceedings that concern them. Of course, this is from our perspective, this is a very this indicator is strongly connected to the others, because according to the CRC and proof, this is envisaged also in the law 47. Children should participate in all decisions concerning them. So this is very connected with all indicators, of course. But from our analysis, still we are very doubtful on how the centrality of the person and the principle of the best interest of the child is really taken into consideration when it comes to unaccompanied and separated children. So, and this has to deal with the practices in place, but also to the lack of cultural mediation, for example. So, still, we are very far from the consideration of the child. And of course, if a child is not informed and cannot participate and understand what is going around his process, of course, you can understand how it can be vulnerable, because he's a bit lost in the system. And on the contrary, being informed and having the opportunity to participate in one's own project is really a self-protective mechanism in a system which is still not able to protect children fully. Then I move on indicator 5. So identification interviews and family investigation. According to the law and according to the CRC, children have the right to family unit. So at the beginning of the path in Italy, at least, there should be a set of investigation on their family, if they have the family somewhere in Europe, if they're alone, in order to guarantee the right of the family, the right to a family, but also in order to exchange with the family if still abroad, and work together for the well-being of the child, if possible, in order to identify long-term solution in the best interest of the child. This should be done also through a set of interviews to really know the child better. What we see from analysis is that actually the family of origins are rarely involved in the process, let's say, and also that in case of families, separated families around Europe, the time of reunification is so long that many children are actually leaving the territory in order to reunite with their families, because the time of these practices is really not feasible for them. So in terms of protection, it's very important to put in place a set of timely preventive actions that can lower down the level of vulnerability, because of course you can imagine a child alone traveling or crossing borders. So I mean, in this way we could really prevent the insurgence of risks. Age assessment is another indicator. Also this is a kind of novelty, let's say, that because the law 47 really prescribes that this procedure of assessment should be done by a multidisciplinary equipe and should follow an holistic approach. After the law came in place in 2020, a protocol really explaining how it should be done was released. But we see that really practices are very far from what is prescribed. Still, in many places in the country, the X-ray of the wrist is still the usual practice, whereas it should be the last resort measure. It should be done through listening to the child, talking to the child, in case with a psychologist, with a cultural mediator. But what we see is that in many places still a sanitary approach is still conceived. And then there is a few awareness on the possible consequences of an age assessment, because of course, if a child is considered an adult, but actually is still a child, I mean, of course, being considered an adult, a whole set of rights is not in place anymore. So the practices of age assessment, from our analysis, many times represent a form of institutional violence, because are not taking into consideration the rights of the child. So again, in terms of protection, what does it mean? Setting up an age assessment procedure in accordance with the law should of course support the right to identity, and in this sense, this represents a fundamental right for every child, but in particular case for unaccompanied children. I'm almost done, don't worry. Yeah? So in terms of development, education, and training, again, the law foresees that every child has the right to education and to get into training path, because of course the aim should be that they when they reach the age of 18, they are integrating in the in the society. So, and this pass from working as well. Considering the non-discrimination principle of the law, the same set of possibilities should be guaranteed also to unaccompanied children. What we see in reality is that many times this is not possible, and many times also personalized paths are not possible to be taken. Why? Because there is a reason of time, because many times young people are arriving close to 18 years old, so there is a urgency to really learn the language, get a job, in order to get the documents, because this is very connected. And so many times this doesn't allow the development of a personalized project, of maybe if children are wanting to study, maybe they cannot because they have really the urgency to find a job and get their documents as adults. Also, cultural mediator is an aspect, because in school, many times this is not guaranteed as it should be. And of course, for them, it's much more difficult to follow the programs and to really get into with the other children. So this I already said, but I mean, all this set of aspects should ensure a long-term and sustainable solution, and having such consideration, of course, works for the protection of unaccompanied children. In terms of health, and you will see a clip later on, again, of course, the law foresees that all unaccompanied children should have access to services and should have their particular needs taken into account. What we see from the analysis is that still in many territories there are different practices, and for children it's not always possible to access services, mainly because of problems with the documents. But also see that in many places, again, there is not a full consideration of health as a psychophysical well-being, but the system mainly focus on the problem without considering the whole person and without taking into account transcultural aspects that many times are part of the health problem. Either because there are no competencies in place, and because many times also cultural mediation is missing. So we see also, touching with some cases, that a consideration of health as a whole condition of psychophysical well-being and the provision of adequate resources, not only in terms of money, but really in terms of competencies and quality of the system, could work for the protection of children, because many times they are considered either mad or deviant children, and many times it's just a matter of understanding what is the problem. I come to the last indicator, is longer, but it is important, which has to deal with the transition to adulthood. This is a key moment because, of course, all the guarantees for children are not in place anymore when unaccompanied children turn 18. So again, it's really important to find sustainable solutions before the coming of age. So the law foresees a measure that is called prolonged support, prosieguo amministrativo, that can be asked and applied for unaccompanied children who are in a way showing to be good guys, and so having a good process, a good path, but also the possibility, as I was mentioning at the beginning, of having this 6-month prolongation in the SICE system. In many cases, as this is a costly measure, this is not implemented, because of course this prosieguo amministrativo that can arrive until the age of 21 is really a constraint in terms of budgets for local institutions. Another problem that we really see, but I don't get into the matter because it's too complicated, concerns the conversions of residence permits, which is very lengthy, sometimes very difficult. And this, of course, poses the child in a vulnerable situation because they find themselves without any document. And if they don't have any document, of course, they can be victims or taken into unlegal affairs or are more vulnerable in a way. So of course, really ensuring long-term sustainable solutions in the best interests of the child represent a preventive factor. Then I move on. I drink a sip of water.
Yes. So it's long, but because it's an incredible law, best practice at European level. And its analysis, it's a complex law, of course, it's a complex system, and its analysis, it was a very complex one to do. Organizing these indicators really helps us to put the child at the center and understand the system from all the dimensions that are in the life of that child and that cover the whole system. And this first analysis, thank you, Martina, for this, because this is essential to understand why in Italy we chose to do the activities and we chose to implement the projects in the way that we did, and why we always push and advocate for an activity, an approach based on prevention. We believe it's an approach that will function in all national contexts, not only in Italy, but especially in Italy. We have to work on the context to help the child be protected, and that means prevention. Now Martina will continue on the approach, but if you want to say something or do a comment or pose a question, please do in the chat that we have our colleague Moira that is looking at that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. So like in a nutshell, which is the approach and the main activities that we are developing. So as you can imagine also from the previous presentation, the approach of the Become Safe initiative is really linked with the CRC and the national and international legislation and standards, not only analysis, but put into action, and also in terms of advocacy actions. As you will see later on with Caterina, is an approach that is based on prevention, especially in a system as we were seeing that is not really functioning. I mean, there are some good practices, but still on a general level is not working as it should. We really consider, and we will go on it in a moment, the relation between vulnerability versus protection, and the relation between these two items, let's say, within the context. So it's a systemic approach, and we always have to consider the context, as I was saying, from the micro to the macro level, because it's all intermingled. We tend to see the person not in terms of their vulnerability, but in terms of resources, as you will see in a moment. Then, of course, we really call for the application of international and national standards, and how they can function as a baseline for a protective context. When the child has his right respected and guaranteed, this means that a big part of the protection is in place, because this is the base. As I was mentioning, we are considering from the micro to the macro level. So the micro, I mean the guardian, the professional that is close to the child, the meso, I'm referring to the reception system and professionals working with the child as a collective. And then at the macro level, we're considering, of course, the policies and the institutions. But we have to have in mind this whole set of things. Otherwise, we'll focus only on a certain child and not do a lot, actually. Then, as we were saying, within the Become Safe initiative, we are really doing an attempt. Actually, we are putting in place, it's not only an attempt, to analyze. So we always start from analysis. So to analyze and reinforce the conditions to limit the vulnerability of the child, avoid violations, and prevent violence. Caterina will come back on this 3B. In terms of activity, you can have a look also on our website, where you will find a description of the initiative. But I mean, at European level, we're working on 3 levels: children and young people, professionals, and stakeholders. So concerning children and young people, as in the other countries, we set up a group of peer facilitators. We engaged 13 young people, former unaccompanied children, and we engaged them in a set of trainings. Actually, they were themselves teaching us a lot of things, I would say, but still, it was conceived as a training. We engaged them last year in a set of meetings, and from the exchange with them, we then move into shelters. We have 4 consultations in different places of our region, which is the Liguria region. So we collected from children themselves who are still in care, so we are still below 18, their perspective on reception, on the rights, on the future. Then we try to put together what the young people already considered and analyzed with the perception of the children. And with some of these young people, we came up with a awareness raising campaign. Since because of our positioning, we can see that we have a problem in accessing shelters because for some of them we are too radical. Yeah. We decided to set up an awareness raising campaign that is made of videos, where every young person, we created the videos, but the young people themselves really created the contents. So the idea is that they thought about their own experience, and so they identified a topic and a problem. Then they thought about the solutions they found, the solutions they applied. And according to their own experience, they are giving some advices to other children who may find themselves in the same situation. I would then now see the video. The videos are in Italian, but we have one video in English, so we decided to show you this.
But the other videos are available in our YouTube channel, because I know that there are some Italian participants here, and the other materials will be available as well. And to explain just a bit this radicalness, is because we are an independent organization and are monitoring the implementation of the law and give the voice to children. So we don't give them, we just let them speak that many times they are not allowed to. And it's what this awareness raising campaign is about. We really focused on things that were important to them and let them speak, and did not have any kind of influence on this. So this raw thoughts of the children involved in the reception system. And I think that is interesting for everyone. So maybe we have to change.
Yeah, just a second. Moment, because okay. So I changed the so we changed the sharing. Yes. Can we put it bigger? Okay. Sorry. Sorry, is the wrong one. Just a second.
Is here. Look.
Okay.
It started a new one.
Okay.
I started getting sick when I came here in Europe. And I was very sick for a long time, and nobody really wants to help me. Nobody really wants to know what is going on. All they could give me is the tablets. And I met a friend which were able to listen to my story, and he accompanied me to a different type of medication. And they listened to my story, know everything. And that was when I got my peace of mind. I would like to say you should first of all take care of your health, because when you lost your health, it's like you lost part of yourself. So the first thing for you to do is to take care of your health.
So just a second, because it's starting again. Okay. So I come back here. Okay.
This is a part of a series with 7 episodes and is available on our YouTube.
Yeah, children and young people decided to focus on health, on getting a house, on getting a job, or learning Italian, because and other things, because all these have been identified by them as really important aspects when it comes to protection and to the expectations also they had before getting to Italy, for example. So then in terms of training of professionals, this is one of the core activities as well of the Become Safe initiatives. And in Italy, I mean, the Become Safe project involved foresaw the involvement of 140 professionals working either in migration and child protection system. Of them, in particular, 80 were professionals working with migrant children and youth, and 60 professionals working for child protection and victim support services. In Italy, many times this differentiation is not really into place, because there are very interconnected professionalities. So we had open training courses. We didn't differentiate between the two targets. In total, we organized five training courses. 2 took place online, 1 pilot, I would say, and 1 in this autumn, a very big one, where we involved mainly professionals from the juvenile justice system, because many times unaccompanied children are considered only when they get in contact with the law, unfortunately. So there were a big need for getting to know more about the phenomena and how they can really exchange and become a protective factor for them from the side of professionals. Then we had the opportunity also to organize free training courses in presence, luckily, in the Marche region and in the Sicily region. So this is very related to our analysis activity as well. In total, we involved 208 professionals in these different training courses. And it has been a really productive activity, and also using because we always apply a interactive approach, we were really able also to collect their views and their hints, and to profit really from their presence to come up with different materials that we will show in a while. A third level of action foreseen in the Become Safe initiative has to deal with the stakeholders, so more in terms of advocacy. So we organized a set of meetings, either online or in presence, also profiting of the ongoing cooperation with actors at national levels, or of the analysis that is going into place. And we're coming up with an advocacy document that is going to be presented at national level on the 12th of December online, because we want to reach the larger audience possible. Then, a few words really, then I stop on the training for professionals, because is really bringing you to Caterina's presentation. So we conceive training with professionals not as a frontal training, but more as an interactive process, as I mentioned. So the idea, so they are more training workshop, I would say. So the main ideas, the main aims of the training for professionals were to share an approach based on children's rights and translate with their practice this approach into their own practice of educational work in contact with children, to present the relationship between vulnerability, resources, resilience, and the context, as Caterina will tell you in a while, and how this factor can qualify the degree to which the minors are protected from exposure to violence, and to propose the use of a child safeguarding as a tool to promote a culture of safeguarding through well-being, and an holistic approach where the realization of the children's rights becomes really the main goal, and also a method of protecting children and protecting their rights, and to preventing their exposure to the phenomena of violence. Caterina will really guide you in these three aspects.
Let's hope.
And the last thing I want to share is just a bit of the main contents that we touched. So of course, as in all our activities, we stem from the CRC. So we presented the structure of the CRC and its basic elements, and how to use a human rights-based approach and apply to work with children. Then we went through the application of the principles and the standards, both of the CRC and the national legislation, as we did before with the presentation of the 9 indicators, but focusing on the protection on unaccompanied children. Then we went through the condition of children and adolescents in development process using the lens of rights. So we proposed some focus on migration dynamics and its circular consideration. Then we proposed the approach to child protection policy, and share a set of minimum standards of safeguarding and well-being for foreign minors, which is not still in place actually, but yes, this is something that we want to propose to professionals. Then I leave the floor to Caterina.
Thank you. I will just ask if there are questions, comments at this point. We presented you the context, the Italian context, our approach, and hopefully why we had this approach. And if you have some consideration, comment, or or doubts, we can discuss them at this point. Otherwise, we will proceed, hopefully giving an idea why we focus so much as prevention as a strategy to avoid violence. But before, you have to prevent violation of rights and tackle the situation of vulnerability that many times children are in. I will continue to share the screen, okay? So, in order to enter this topic, I think it's useful for us to focus in a few words that are key for these 3 V's. That are risk, prevention, resilience, resourceful or resources of the child, and the context and protection. And to help us, like putting ourselves in a situation of really listening and being taken to this theme. I would like to start from the etymology of the word vulnerability, which is from the Latin word vulnus, which means wound. So this wound can be either physical or psychological, and it also has an element of possibility. So it's vulnerable is not one who already is wounded, is one who could potentially be wounded. And also is important here the definition of resilience, that is the ability of a material to recover its shape after a collision, and indicates by analogy the possibility to recover after a trauma, or the opportunity to rediscover one's resources, experience new ones, and initiate a process of recognition. So recover can occur immediately after a period of dysfunctionality, or take longer, but anyone can recover. And this resilience is very important and is connected with risk and vulnerability. So these 3 words are also pretty much connected, because to put it simply, hopefully, so vulnerability is caused by risk and balanced by resilience. Therefore, the level of vulnerability is not only determined by endogenous characteristics of the person itself, but also by the availability or scarcity of opportunities in the relevant context. So we can say that the context, the person can be in a situation of vulnerability or not, but the context is capable of enhancing the resources of the person, lowering the situation of vulnerability and the risk, or these contexts can be non-protective and non-preventive and doesn't have resources and does not make the person fulfill their full potential, and these will raise the vulnerability and will do that there is a violation of the rights of the person, and that the person is put in a condition of violence. So I talk much about these 3 words, but how are these connected really? How are these linked? So it is possible to say that unaccompanied children are effectively in a situation of particular vulnerability. if you see, we most of the times we don't say they are vulnerable. So I could say unaccompanied children are vulnerable, but we do not consider a person to be vulnerable just because they are vulnerable. Of course, they are in a situation of vulnerability, not only to being underage and due to being alone in a foreign country, many times subject to discrimination in contravention of Article 1 of the Law 47, but mainly because they are placed in a dysfunctional system which does not operate having their best interests as primary consideration. Because if they were considered and if all their rights were fulfilled, this vulnerability lowered. So if we consider that the context is capable of having an influence in the situation of a vulnerable person or a specific group, the violation of their rights in accordance to the Law 47, 2017, effectively puts the child or young person in a situation of increased risk of being exposed to violence. So these three words are connected because if we lower the resources of the context, if we are not attentive to the context, this vulnerability, this situation of vulnerability will increase, as will increase the violation of their rights, as will increase the violence. So these are linked in almost proportional yes. So DCI Italy's approach is based on the centrality of the person and an approach using this safeguarding circle. That is using prevention as a strategy to promote a non-discriminatory approach towards accompanying children, non-accompanied children, but also safeguarding through well-being. So the more a child, the rights of the child are being fulfilled and their well-being is being taken into consideration, the less it is probable that they will have a violation of their rights and will happen violence in their lives. So this cycle of protection foresees a set of integrated activities that the professionals, either staff here, either in NGOs or in schools or in theaters or in the reception system, everyone should apply these activities. That is first phase of prevention. These prevention phases precede all the actions that are put in place after having identified potential risks of violation of the rights of children. And I can give you an example that, for example, in the reception system, this would be as the law foresees. So the law is based on a prevention approach. Would be having a clear project for all children placed in care, working for a sustainable exit of the reception system. If this protection phase fails and an actual risk is identified, we enter this phase of protection, where specific measures should be put in place in order to avoid violation of the rights and this exposure to violence. And an example of these are, for example, that it doesn't happen that all children have a clear project, either training project and formative project. So there is this measure of prolonged support, proseguo amministrativo, in order for young people to have more time within the reception system and try to do their projects. If this protection phase does not is not capable of avoiding the risks and minimizing and mitigating the risks or eliminate it, and there is a violation of their rights or a situation of violence, we should enter in the phase of response. This response should be immediate and always having in mind the centrality of the child and their best interests as primary consideration. It's very important that after this, we enter in a phase that is reestablishing the conditions of well-being of the child, so that the child re-enters the cycle of protection. What many times happen in the reception system is that there is effectively a violation of the rights, many times continued violation of their rights or situations of violence, and the child or the young person gets out of this cycle of protection, getting out of the system or in any way being involved in other systems, the justice system, for example. And so this shows the systems fails to continue including them in this protection cycle. In addition to strengthening and enhancing the personal resilience and the resources of young persons, it is imperative to consider their specific context, the context they are in order to try to reduce the external risk factors that may lead to this violation of their rights and propitiate the onset of violence. So this focus on prevention. Thank you. How can we do this? So this is an approach. It's not the solution for everything, but we see that in the context that we work in, many times this can be a solution that can help not only the young children, young people and children, but also the professionals, because they feel they are involved in a system that is working both for children and young people, but for them as well. Because what we see many times in the reception system is frustrated professionals, burned out professionals, because what happens is that they know that the system is not working, and it's not working neither for them, neither for children. So there are some things that can help. One of the things is, of course, training, to be informed, to exchange knowledge and experience, to find new methodologies, to try and keep informed. Organizing the spaces and the means when we are with children, when we work with children, when we receive children, always try to identify the risks. Many of the times this is very natural. We do this in a very natural way. And this helps a lot to, for example, the physical risks, try to avoid them, mitigate them or eliminate them. And having a clear and transparent methodology for activities, and develop and implement clear procedures. And it's very important that these procedures are transparent and available for children. We start our trainings or our meetings always stating the methodology, what we will do, how we will do, what young children and also professionals can expect from us there, so that everyone is on the same page and they feel engaged, and we feel engaged as well as professionals. And this leads me to transparency. Being transparent with colleagues, with ourselves, and with children. Having procedures in place is the first step, but is the first of many steps to ensure the prevention of violence. So children should be informed how and whom to talk to in the cases they don't feel safe, and should be afforded anonymous channels to expose complaints. So it's talk, talk, talk. Exchanging knowledge and experience with your colleagues ensures that protection, prevention, and all these keywords we are speaking about today are not just keywords and are kept alive in our day-to-day work. And take immediate action. Even it's just a worry, one should take action. The best interests of the child should always be our primary consideration. And taking the child out of the violent cycle and engaging him or her again in the cycle of prevention and protection. And last but not least, referral system and follow-up. When the referral system is identified, it's much easier either for children, staff, professionals to be able to refer the matter to the appropriate person. Having a strong referral system means having a strong context capable of strengthening the resources of the child and reducing vulnerability. And hopefully this will reduce the violation of their rights and reduce the situations of violence. So we believe that the adoption of a systemic and multidisciplinary perspective makes it possible to build a synergic and interdependent protection system, which is fundamental to overcome the fragmentation that often facilitates the occurrence of phenomena like trafficking, exploitation, violence, and violation. Any protection strategy should consider the context as the dimension that can stimulate or produce vulnerability, or on the contrary, enhance the available personal resources and resilience of the child. All of us working from a logic of prevention can hopefully help us in working in the context and making this context help children realize their full potential. Now, this leads us to this tool. Yes, a proposal, a tool that hopefully can help us in positioning ourselves within the system that many times, even if the system works, many times it's difficult to navigate, it's very complex. And so we developed this having in mind all the obstacles to the full realization of the rights of unaccompanied children, independently of the system, having in mind the system and the efficient implementation of the good national and international standards that exist. And on the other hand, having in mind our approach of well-being and preventive context as a strategy to avoid violence. I think you can proceed a little bit. I don't know if anyone has any doubt or comments, because me and Martina were speaking, but we are not used not to seeing people. Normally, we feel more. We feel that we have a more warm context, but today it is what it is. Okay, we have
feedback, so
one good feedback, so we can go on.
Okay, I mean. I'm sorry, they just start working outside. I hope the noise doesn't come in too much. So this proposal of standards, these are the materials I was mentioning before that we propose also to the professionals with whom we were working during the Become Safe initiative, and it functions more as a checklist. I mean, is a set of orientations, but also the possibility of checking really if if professionals are working or positioning themselves towards the protection of unaccompanied minors. So, I mean, needless to say, but it's good to remember anyway, is that all people or persons working directly or indirectly with children and adolescents, they have a fundamental duty of care and responsibility towards them. Of course, so I mean, there is the need also of having a set of procedures and standards to be followed to guide professionals in their duty. What we are going to propose you in our moment is a guidance that is based on a systemic multidisciplinary approach, and that is based on the rights of the child and focus on the needs of each child. So trying to really help professional is in seeing every child in his own specificity. This set of standards of checklist are based on a national legal framework, in particular the Law 47/2017 that we explained before, international standards, which are also recalled by the law, and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So this adherence and recalling of international standards and rights, we believe really gives a strong basis and a really clear indication of the, not only of this document in general. But do you, Beta?
I can go.
Okay.
We can do half and half. So these checklists and these standards, so the checklist is based on a set of standards. As a general, the general objective is, of course, to increase the level of protection of unaccompanied foreign minors in the reception system by decreasing their, not only, but also by decreasing their level of vulnerability.
So we identified four specific goals. So one is to reaffirm the law-based culture that inspired the system of norms and values of the current applicable standards. So this connection with rights, as we were, and legislative standards, as we were mentioning.
Perfect.
But okay, to provide, as mentioned, multidisciplinary and shared reference materials that can really support the work of professionals while they are working in contact with foreign minors. So to act really also as a support mechanism, we hope, to provide then a useful tool to assess not only to assess either one's individual work at individual level, but also how effective and appropriate are one's intervention in a group context, because professionals work or should work, but do work in a group. And also, as we were mentioning, this document functions as a set of orientation, so with the aim of providing guidance on the meaning and functions of their role.
So the structure as how we organized it in know, do, be. What one should know, do and be when working with unaccompanied children. So the know is theoretical skills. So the general information, the really what you should know, be informed about. Related to the child and the context that anyone working with children should have. The do are orientations with respect to direct or indirect activities that one should do when working with children, when doing their mandate. So being proactive and consistent with their role, one should do certain activities. And what one should be what should be one's attitude and positioning. So orientations with respect to relational skills and personal attitude required to establish relationship, as well as respect behavioral, cultural, and gender issues that may interfere in the relationship, and with the duty to identify, listen without prejudice, promote and protect the child's best interests. So because many times there is this idea that the work is very far away from the personality, but when working with especially with everyone, but especially with children and young persons in situations of particular vulnerability, is very important that how you are and how you approach the young people.
Yeah, and if I can, this also brings our back to the initial exercise, so to the centrality of the person with whom we are working, but also who we are. So why this is also why the attitude.
Yes. We just give you some examples of two examples of some of the checklists, some of the division, and hopefully in the next few days you can find all the checklists available in our website for downloading, and it would be very useful if you could send us a word if you find it useful, if it's interesting in your work, or with suggestions. We would love to hear more about your considerations on this checklist.
So
wait, oh, sorry. Okay, we were answering some questions.
Okay, so just to give you an example, you wanna explain this?
No, you can go.
Okay, so this is how these standards / checklists are conceived. So you see the standard, so rights of the children, for example, and every standard as a question to the professional. So how can I translate the rights of children recognized in the national and international legal framework into practice? So this is, for example, concerning the rights of the children. So, and then as Katerina was mentioning, it is divided into know, do, be. We try to talk directly, let's say, to the professional. So that's why is I am familiar, I recognize. That's why it works as a checklist. So, for example, I just read it, then you will see others. I am familiar with the relevant legislation on the protection of unaccompanied foreign minors, the rights of children, and the means to enable them. I recognize that every child is a legal person. I recognize that every child has a story, and I am aware that each one has their own resources and capabilities. I am aware that all adults working in contact with young people are responsible for creating favorable conditions where young people are encouraged and able to express themselves. In the do part, I work with the framework of an operational strategy shared with colleagues focused on the best interests of the child, his or her interests, and aimed at a sustainable care living. I make sure the child knows his or her rights. I use a pedagogical, educational, and sometimes rehabilitative logic as the preeminent one. I operate using the best interests of the child as a preeminent category over my own interests and the interests of the structure context I work in. And then B, I have an empathetic attitude towards children and a collaborative attitude towards colleagues, opposing situations that may jeopardize the rights of young people. I contribute to creating or supporting an environment where young people are listened to and respected as individuals. This is the logic, let's say, yes. The structure.
Then we can show you, yes, it can be a good thing. And then we enter in some specifics, for example, activities, training, how can I qualify school and or vocational training to promote sustainable care living, how can I ensure the effective participation of young people? And here we will present to you also cultural mediation and appreciation of circles of affiliation. So in the know, what should I know? I understand, this is a checklist, so I understand that cultural mediation is a transversal competence aimed at facilitating mutual understanding and thus relations between people from different cultural backgrounds, and not only translation or interpretation. I keep myself informed with respect to the young person's culture of origin and background with respect to the migration phenomena. So I understand all of these dimensions and different things. What I should do? I consider and value the child's diversity, availing myself, if necessary, of the support of a professional, a cultural mediator, or an ethno-psychiatrist. Whenever possible and requested by the child, I try to establish a synergy between the context of origin and the reception structure. B, I treat all young people with respect, adhering to the principle of non-discrimination. And I am proactive in identifying my own needs for in-depth study of the transcultural dimension. We have many others, but I think that we have spoken a lot, and we would like to leave a little bit of time for discussing.
Yeah, there are 16. Yeah, the last thing, sorry.
No.
The way forward, as we were mentioning at the beginning, one of the main characteristics of our approach to Become Safe initiative is the consideration of all levels within the context. So for this reason, we are finalizing a set of 10 guarantees for the protection of unaccompanied children, which will be released on this webinar on the 12th of December at national level. So in Italian, to put it clearly. And these are not only the reflection, let's say, of the analysis that we presented so far, so the same set of indicators, but also every guarantee as a call to action at all levels, so micro level, meso, and macro level. So the idea is to put together in a way, in a synthetic way, all the considerations guiding our Become Safe approach, and not only the Become Safe, but in general, our approach towards protection of unaccompanied children in a very short documents and very stick to the point. And then if you have any comments, question, or whatever, we are at disposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can also use your mic if you want, because we enabled you to talk if you prefer.
A lot of information, we understand, but there were really a lot of activities within this project, and our team really tried to always repositioning ourselves, always thinking about how we are working, if we are doing the things the best way we can for the protection and with children. So these are always a possibility for us to reposition ourselves as professionals and really reinforce our approach and our activities as a team, and working with young people that we already worked in the past with some of them when they were unaccompanied minors, and now they are peer facilitators. It's refreshing, it's regenerative, because we can really see the evolution that makes in having a context that does not do anything else for you, either than outside of protecting your rights, defending the rights that every child has. So the simple fact of the simple, that should be simple, but it's not that simple, of having their rights not full realized, but realized to some extent, is already a big push for these children to develop and realize their full potential, keeping them outside of the circles of violence.
Thank you. Thank you. I see the messages in the chat. Thank you very much. We remain available. Here you can see our contacts, our website and channels. So if you want to get more involved and to know more, I mean, all our resources are available and free to download and be read. Before leaving you, I will just launch a very short poll. It's just 3 questions, just to have a small, sorry, what is this? No. Okay. So it's just 3 questions that you can kindly reply. So while you fill it in, again, we really thank you for your participation, and we remain available for any information on or inquiry you may have. And we hope these materials can be put for thought.
Yes. And if you wish to be informed of our next activities, we sometimes do things in English, in Italian. Please feel free to go to our website and enter our newsletter, and also follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. You have many channels where you can be informed about our activities. Thank you. And hopefully next time we can see each other, because this is a new thing for us.
Thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Ciao.